Hey, how's it going? And I'm excited to bring you this tutorial today on how to create a teleportation effect. It could also be a death by laser effect. It's completely up to you. It has a lot of applicability and it looks something like this. If we hit play, this model over here is just a reference, but if I hit W and I cross this is takes me to the teleportation effect. I am gone, just like that. And I believe that this effect could be reversed to bring me back into existence as well. So it's just a really nifty effect. It has a lot of application in games and storytelling and things like that. There's a lot to do with materials. It's about a 20-25 minute tutorial. I think it'll be worth your while if you watch it. I've been through it several times, so I know it works. I'll be right back in just a minute. We're ready to go. So to get started, we're just going to go in games, third person. We're in the 5.2 game engine, and I'm just calling it teleportation, and we'll start. How I got started on this one was I was getting ready to drag assets in from Lyra, and I'm not able to get the spawning to work yet, so I was trying to figure out how I could use the wall portal or one of the other launch pads, which kind of look like a teleporter, and then create my own kind of spawning effect. So that's what this really is. It's a poor man's spawning effect. But anyway, hopefully you'll learn a lot. I know I learned a lot and was refreshed on a lot doing this tutorial. So there's a couple little gotchas along the way that were very frustrating. So anyway, to get started on this, we're going to right click, and we're at the third person blueprint level right now. And we're just going to go to material, new material. And just to make my life easy, I'm just going to call it A. Actually, I'll call it M underscore AAA. So it's just easy to find. And then we're just going to double click into this. There's a lot of nodes in here, and so I could spend an hour probably explaining everything, but I'm going to kind of just go quick just because I think you can figure it out on your own later. The first thing is with the material node set, we're going to change our blend mode from opaque to masked. And then what we're going to need is we just need a bunch of nodes. And here's where it's helpful to know your shortcut keys because you can save a lot of time. So the first thing we need is a vector. So that's what we use to create colors and things like that because it's 4 values actually. And we're going to go ahead and press V as in Victor and left click, and we get a node there. And we're just going to call this color. And then with that node selected, we're going to go ahead and hit Control D and duplicate it. And this one you can press F2 or you can just rename it over here. I find it easier to name it over here. And we'll just call it emissive. And emissive is a lot like luminosity. It makes the object light itself, essentially. And I did a tutorial about lit materials, and so if you want to know more about that, you can watch that one. But anyway, if we click this, you can use any color you want. This is just a base color. I'm just going to type in a 1 here, so it's totally red. And then I'm just going to darken it up here and pull the value down. So I just want a kind of a dark burgundy, I forget that player on the marble that has that kind of color. He's the guy with the eye in the middle of his forehead. And then this one is going to be our glowing teleportation color. So this, I would imagine, could be any color. If you're noticing the value's not changing over here, you have to sometimes click on this bar. So whatever color you want for this, but I imagine it to be kind of a orangish color, maybe something like that, or maybe yellow, something in that realm. And then just keep the value high on that, and then we'll just go okay. And all these can be changed later. And then kind of the star of the show for this particular material is what's called a box mask 3D. So we're going to right click and go box mask 3D, this one right here. It's in 2 places on here. I'm not sure why that is. And then we just need a couple nodes here. So one we're looking for is called right click, and we're going to search for world position, this one right here. And that just goes straight into the A right there. And then we're going to search for one called actor position. And that's actor position world space. And that just goes in there. We don't have to make any adjustments on these 2 nodes right here. And then next we need what are called 2 scalar parameters. And later we're going to animate one of these values to create our actual teleportation effect. So we'll be pulling that from the blueprint we're going to be creating. This is since it's such a common node, the shortcut key is S as in Sam and click. And these are viewable when you create a material instance. When it's a parameter, that means it's going to be instance editable essentially on a material. So this one, we're just going to call this boundary, like that. And then we're going to go ahead and plug that into where it says bound. And then the next one, we can just hit Control D, make another one. And this one we're going to call edge. And this one is the one we're going to be animating. And there's a lot of finessing and playing around you can do with all these. I will set the values right at the very end, but right now they're at 0. And now we just need some math nodes basically to finish this up. And there's quite a few that we're going to need. So this base color one just goes straight into color, goes straight into base color there. And then we just got about, I don't know, 7 or 8 more nodes to get here. So let's just get the nodes we need, and then we'll go ahead and hook them all up. So there's 5 that we need and 2 more scalars. So we're going to right click and we're going to search for what's called a saturate node. This one. Then we're going to right click, or we don't even have to right click, we can press M and click and get a multiply node. Whoops, thought I clicked M and click and get a multiply node. And then we're going to get one, right click and get one that's called a power node. And these are just for adjusting our light settings that you'll see in just a minute. And then the next one is what's called a linear interpolation node, or it's known, a lot of people call it a lerp node, but you won't find it under lerp. It's right there. And then the last thing is right click and they're just typing a 1 and a subtract sign. And we want this 1 minus node here. And then we just need 2 more scalar nodes. So you hold down S and click. And this one we're going to call intensity. And then we're going to hit Control D and duplicate it. And this one, we're going to call this one power. And that's all the nodes we need. So it takes a little while. And then all these just line up, all these hook up together like this. So what's going to happen is we just hook this one into saturate. Saturate goes into multiply. Multiply goes into power. And power is going to go into the alpha channel right there. And then intensity is going to plug into multiply here. So we can modify these values from within the level editor. And this power plugs into power there, like that. And then this lerp node here is going to plug into our emissive color. So this is just going to plug into our emissive color there. And this color is our emissive color, so it's going to blend with that one. And then lastly, for our opacity mask, we're just going to drag off of this, put this into there, and this is just going to come all the way over here kind of on a home run and go into our opacity mask. And that's all we need to do. Now, you'll start seeing different things here depending on the objects. I've come to these values by playing around with the mannequin, so we may not be able to see anything here reflected in this view right here, and it's just because I've adjusted it for the mannequin, not for these particular primitive objects and things like that. But we sort of see the color shining through. So just as a, to get started for boundary here, I'm just going to type in, I'm going to put in 100 there. So we come over here where it says default value, and we can just type in 100 there. And then for edge here, I'm just looking at my notes, I put in a 2 for edge. Oops, over here is probably easier to do. 2 for there. And then on intensity, for intensity I have, oh, I take that back. So I'm sorry, for boundary it's not 100, it's actually 12. So you might see it go away actually. And then for intensity here, I have intensity is 100. Well, it's easier just adjust it over here, 100. And then here for power, I have power at a 3. So it would put in 3. And like I said, we'll adjust all these values later. So let's go ahead and apply and save. And depending on what your object you may or may not see anything. So we're seeing a little something there. But like I said, this is adjusted. These values are adjusted. So just to review those real fast, for boundary is a 12, edge is a 2, intensity is a 100, and power is a 3. And all those, like I said, can be adjusted later. And you can see some of it breaking through right there. Okay, but it's the edge that's going to create our teleportation effect. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and save again, and we don't see any asterisks, and we're basically done with that material. So back here, once we have this material, we can right click and create a material instance of it, and we'll just call this MIAAA, and then that's saved there. And then just for reference, we can get a character here, and if we go into the mannequins, animations, Quinn, we just get idle and drag that onto the scene. You can see here where her material instances are set in an array, and there's an element 0 and an element 1. So that's important. You'll see in just a minute how that factors in. And we'll come back in here and we'll just drag this onto her here and drag this onto her. No, not that one. This one here too. So if I hit play, she looks fully luminous, and that doesn't seem quite right. So usually I don't see her looking that luminous. So let's double click into this, and we'll activate these settings here. But then I'm also thinking I might need to double check my settings because I don't remember this being this luminous before. So I could have hooked something up wrong. And I do see what I hooked up wrong already is this needs to go into the B. There we go. There's nothing going into the A, so I need to disconnect this. There we go. Yep, so that was my mistake. Sorry about that. So if we take a screenshot of this, the emissive actually goes into B on the lerp node, and then all this other goes into the alpha. But this is correct. So that was my mistake in wiring. The emissive goes into the B on the lerp, not into the A. So now that's what you should be seeing. That's why I was thrown off there. That's why I say I've done it a few times, so I knew that something wasn't quite right. And then those values stand. So that's what she should look like, okay? And then there's our material instance there, and it's updated. Okay, so we're good. So far, so good. So the last thing we need to do now is just create our blueprint, and this is not that hard to do, really. This part's actually kind of fun. So I don't really like building materials that much, so I enjoy actually just straight visual scripting. So anyway, we'll go into blueprint class, and we're going to get an actor, and we're going to call this BP underscore, and I'll just call it teleportation. But like I said, you can use this for, I mean, it has so many possibilities. We're going to double click into this, and this is going to go pretty quick, this part of it. Let me dock this like that. And all we need to start with is just get a box collision. And this is what's going to trigger everything to change. We can thicken up the lines there. We just come down here now to the on component begin overlap. And I just did a tutorial on casting, and so what we really need is we need to get access to the third person player characters so that we can get a hold of the mesh and the materials associated with that mesh. So that's what all this is about right now. So we'll come up here to on event begin play, and we're just going to cast to our BP third person. Cast to BP third person right there. And then if we right click, we can get the player character. So we get player character, and that just goes into here like that. And then just for convenience, we don't have to do this. We can promote that to a variable, but we don't actually need to do that. We can pull off of here to get everything that we need. Okay, so now down here is the home stretch of everything, really. So with our connection to our third person template hooked up, we can now go get the mesh. So we type in get mesh, and it should be down here right there. And there's that. And then once that's set up, there's a really fantastic node. And if we right click it, we can go create dynamic material instance. And this has so much application, it's not even funny. And we actually need two of these, one for element 0 and one for element 1. So we're just going to hit Control D to duplicate it. And so for this one, we're going to go ahead and drag in our mesh here. Let's see, why is it not letting me do that? I don't see, this can't be right. So let me delete that real fast. We're going to have to get it off of here. So we're going to go create dynamic material instance material. That's what we need. Sorry about that. Again, I did a second mistake, and then we can duplicate it because we'll need to see this element here. That's why. So then there's a 1 there. So 1 goes into 1, and that's a little bit of a gotcha. You can only get certain nodes off of certain places. So this gets plugged right into there, and then that's good to go. So here's where I got tripped up before. So now all we need to do is make a timeline. And this is what's kind of weird about this whole thing is, you'll see in just a minute. So I'm going to add timeline. And I've already done the experimentation on this. We can just leave it called timeline. We're going to add a float track here. And we're going to make you can make this any length you want if you want the teleportation effect to be 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. I'm just going to put it at 3 seconds. So we'll just go ahead and put 3 seconds in there. Then we right click here on the timeline, add a key to the curve. We'll set the value to 0. And our edge value is already, I believe, set at 2. So we'll set it to the same value as that. Then we're going to right click again, add a keyframe. We'll set the time here to 5 or 3, which is the end of our timeline. And the value to make it completely disappear is 552 or any number above that. And then if you want to see the entire graph, you just click here and click there, and that's our timeline. So we'll compile and save that. And believe it or not, we're almost done. So the last thing we got to do is we'll finish hooking up these exec pins here. And then I'm just double checking some things. So this target here on the second create dynamic needs to go into there. And then we'll have these 2 return values that we're going to need here. And this is where I got tripped up and very frustrated. And hopefully we're going to search for set scalar parameter value. And the only place we can get the one we need is pulling off of here. So we're going to search for set scalar parameter value. And that's the one we want right there. And we can only get it from pulling off of here. And this one needs to go into here too. So both of those need to go into there. We can put a reroute node here. That's the tricky part. This part is the tricky part. Getting this node can only come from these nodes here, create dynamic. And then we just simply plug this into play from start. Update goes in here. And then this value here goes in there. And all the wires, all the pins accepted all our wires, so everything looks good. As far as I can tell, that's all we need to do. So this little bit of logic here, I can get rid of these nodes because we don't need them. They're just cluttering up everything. So that is all of our logic. It's not that much, but it is a little tricky getting the nodes you need because you can only get them from certain areas. So let's compile and save. And let's go ahead and, so now we're here. And let's say we had some kind of asset from Lyra in here, like a beamy thing kind of coming up like the launch pad, which we're going to get in one of the next tutorials. And then we can just place this effect, this BP trigger right there, right on the launch pad. You won't even know it's there. So then when the player walks over to it, it's going to look like they spawned out of existence or beamed out of existence. So it's a lot more realistic than if they just disappeared. Here it looks like they beamed out or something. So now we'll hit play and see if it works. So there I am, walk over here, and nothing happens. So what did I do wrong? Let's see here. On component begin overlap. I didn't see anything change. I didn't switch out the source material here. Okay, so we need to go MIAA, this one right here, and this one right here. Sorry about that again. AAA. There we go. So that explains why nothing happened. There was no swap happened. So let's try it again. We'll hit play. And let's see if it works. So it looked like something wanted to happen there. It looks like a laser burn. So let me double check our settings then. So like I said, there might be some adjustments that need to be made in terms of the... Oh, oh my gosh, this, I apologize. The problem is we need to put the parameter name in there, which is edge. Oh my gosh, I guess I haven't had my coffee today. Compile, save. Oh boy. Okay, that's what it was. Now it should work. There we go. And that might be too bright. Like maybe that was too bright. That's why I say I think if you reverse the timeline, you can actually redo the effects. So you can have them spawn in and spawn out. So if that's too bright, what you can do is use this reference person as a reference here. So if we come over here and double click on our material instance and bring it down here and then come back in here, that's what I'm using this character for, is we can play around with these values and see, like if we bump up the edge, you can see how bright it gets. You can see them. So you could say like maybe bring the intensity down, or maybe bring the power down a little bit. You know, do you just play around with these values to see what works and what doesn't work for you. Boundaries and stuff like that. But the edge is what's going to make it like go across like that. So the edge we don't have to really worry about. It's really just the power and intensity. So let's just try those lower values and see what happens. Did I save those? So I might want to hit save all. Okay. So hit play and see. Yeah, so maybe a little bit more luminosity. So like I said, you just have to play around with that. That looked like a little too weak. So I think for the intensity I had 120. Maybe I'll just bring it up here a little, maybe like that, and save that one and see how that looks. It's kind of neat when it kind of glows out like that. So you're seeing it glow out over there. So let's see. Maybe that's too much. So yeah, it's just something you have to play around with to get the value that you want. So let's try it, just bringing it down a little bit more. Maybe bring the power down a little bit more. Save that one and see how that looks. Hit play. Oh, that's a little bit better. So anyway, I hope you found this helpful. I realize this was a little longer than I normally go. So, and I apologize for those little missteps in there, but I'm trying to do most of it from memory. So take care, have a great day, and I'll talk to you next time.